And hello, everybody, and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian. Thank you very much for joining me on this week's podcast. Of course, this is the podcast. It's called Movie Pit, so you can just assume what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about movies. We're going to talk about all the latest breaking movie news that has come out this week, and I'll wrap them up right here on one little podcast for you guys. So we're going to talk about the big noteworthy news items. Now, I will tell you right now, undoubtedly, as you can probably tell from the title of the podcast, that I will be talking about Thor Ragnarok later on the podcast. We're going to talk about Thor at the end of the podcast. I'm going to be doing a little kind of spoiler review for it. And so there's going to be a lot of news items that I don't end up talking about on the podcast that I would have normally talked about on the podcast. So if you want to go watch those, or if you want to go see those, you can go to the Facebook page. I did end up cutting a lot of stuff that I would have normally talked about or would have loved to talk about. So I ended up cutting those and putting them up on the Facebook page for all you guys to go read. So there will be a Thor Ragnarok spoiler review at the very end of the podcast. So you can look forward to that. Because I ended up seeing it last night, and just a little preview. It was really, really good. So I will leave you at that. So let's get to the podcast, so this podcast doesn't end up becoming too long. So, of course, as always here on the podcast, we always talk about the big noteworthy news items that came out after the podcast went up last week. And this is the case. You know, stuff like that drops all the time. And this week we only have, like we did last week, two big noteworthy news items that came out. The first one is that Guillermo del Toro is taking a break from directing. Now, you know, when you hear that kind of statement, I think sometimes people take for granted what it takes to actually direct a movie. Now, I've never directed a movie. I've helped other people direct kind of like these little short skits and stuff like that. But directing a feature-length movie, it seems like a daunting task. And Del Toro, ironically, has talked about this in the past when he's talked about not being able to do his adaptation of At the Mountains of Madness, which is based off of a Lovecraft story. And I think there was another project he wanted to direct that he ended up talking about this. But in an interview, I think it was years ago, he had said that by the way, if you hear something in the background, that people are doing work outside the house, so ignore the noise if you hear it. But he had said in an interview back in the day that directing a movie is like a marriage, and it takes years and years and years to do. And it does. When you're a director, you are there from the very beginning. You are there from the concept stage, especially if you're writing help to script, or if in a lot of cases, in Del Toro's case, he ends up co-writing the script or writing the script by himself. So he is there at the concept stage. He is there writing the script. He is there in pre-production, trying to sell the movie to other studios. Finally, when he gets to direct a movie, he's setting up shops. He is setting up shots. Now I can't talk. He's visualizing. He's doing storyboards and all this stuff, and he's just. And then you get to film, and filming is like a few months, and then you're in a room by yourself or with someone else in post-production. So it gets a little, it's really hard. So and Del Toro has been on a bit of a trend lately, where he's just going from project to project. But speaking with Variety, Del Toro admitted that he will be taking a year off of filmmaking. Now, apparently the idea of taking the year off came from when he was doing The Shape of Water, which is this movie coming out in December. Now, Del Toro's next film was supposed to be a remake of Fantastic Voyage. However, that was going to be a little bit delayed because The Shape of Water has been getting a lot of great Oscar buzz, and there's been saying that maybe it could get a push for that. So it would have to come after Oscar season, which is around February. So they kind of would have to push that back, and that was going to be the case. However, now that this is happening, Fantastic Voyage is no longer his next movie, or it could be, but obviously he's taking a year off. Not only that, Del Toro's other project that he's been working on for a while now, which is a black and white film called Silver, he admitted that film is still in the writing stages, but will now probably take a lot of his time since he's not directing anything. And that movie, by the way, which sounds really cool, it follows a luchador who discovers that all politicians are vampires, and he sets out to slay them. So it's kind of a throwback to those old. But if you never knew this, there are a lot of old movies. Most of them are in Spanish because most of them are Mexican movies of luchadors who star in their own movies and have these crazy, wacky plots like fighting vampires or fighting werewolves or just all this crazy stuff. So I highly recommend that you go and try to find some of those because they are a delight to watch. I will admit that. But anyway, so Del Toro wanted to do that. That was going to be potentially his next project after he did Fantastic Voyage. But obviously now he's taking a year off, and of course he still will be around to promote The Shape of Water, which comes out in December. And if The Shape of Water does get some Oscar buzz and love, then he will be around until around February, March, around that season. So, and despite the break that he's taking from directing, he's still going to be a producer on several projects. One of them is actually a documentary he's going to be a producer on. That sounds very heartbreaking, but he still will be around for that. I don't mind that Del Toro is taking a break. I think this is a very excellent move. I mean, directors probably take breaks all the time. We just don't notice. So good on Del Toro for taking the break. I think he probably deserves it. Like I mentioned, he's been it feels like he's been going back to back on a lot of projects. You have Pacific Rim and Crimson Peak, and now Shape of Water, and being a producer on Pacific Rim 2. So he's been all over the place. So good for Del Toro for not burning himself out essentially and doing this. So I think this is really cool. Alright, so let's move on to the next movie news item that came out last week, which was kind of a big one that dropped after the podcast went up. I was a little upset that I didn't get to talk about this last week on the podcast, but Zachary Levi has joined the cast of Shazam. It's actually the first real cast member of the movie. So with Justice League right around the corner, and Aquaman set to come out next year, already finished filming on that. The other movie that's going to start shooting soon for the DCEU is Shazam. Now, the movie will be directed by David F. Sandberg, who directed Lights Out and Annabelle Creation. And while names have been rumored and thrown into consideration by fans or by actors themselves, releasing audition tapes or whatever, DC Films and New Line Cinema, which is owned by Warner Brothers, has finally landed on a very surprising name in Zachary Levi. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with the character, we have talked about the character here and there on the podcast, but the story follows a boy named Billy Batson, who has the power to transform into an adult superhero simply by uttering the magic word, or sometimes yelling it, not just saying it, but yelling it, Shazam. Now, the word itself actually stands for the gods and historical figures like Solomon, Hercules, Atlas, Zeus, Achilles, and Mercury, which give Batson as Shazam his powers. In the comics, Shazam actually has a very interesting history, and in the comics he's even fought Superman from time to time, holding his own. So that's pretty cool. So the Hollywood Reporter broke the news that Levi would be the character, but they also broke the news that actors like Jake McDorman from American Sniper and the TV series Limitless, Billy Magnuson from the movie Into the Woods and British Spies. He was also recently in Ingrid Goes West that came out earlier this year, although it got a limited release, so I don't know if you saw that. Zane Hoytz from the TV series From Dusk Till Dawn. Derek Thieler, I think that's how you say his last name. He's in the TV series Baby Daddy right now on Freeform. And of course, John C. We're in the mix for the role before Levy walked away with it. Now, everyone's been very surprised and have a lot of things to say about Zachary Levi playing Shazam. I being one of them, although I haven't publicly stated what I think. Levi is a self-proclaimed nerd. He does host a big party at Comic-Con every year. I think it's called Nerd HQ. I don't have it. I think that's what's called. I'm pretty sure that's what's called, Nerd HQ. But he broke into the scene with a very nerdy action comedy show that had a very big following in Chuck, and he's been in various other projects like the Heroes show from a few years ago. Heroes Reborn, that was the reboot. He's just been in a bunch of other. He's not been in a lot of stuff since Chuck ended, but besides Heroes, obviously being a TV show. But his name, again, it caused this little ruckus, little storm amongst people, because people saying that Levi isn't big enough, or his name was just very randomly selected. Basically, a lot of the main complaints is that he's not big enough. He doesn't have a lot of muscular. He doesn't have the body type for the character, which in itself seems yes, that probably is a complaint. Zachary Levi, in my eyes, would not be the first name that I would pick to play a character like Shazam, especially if he was on the list of those actors and John Cena was on the list. Now, yes, John Cena doesn't have a lot of acting experience in movies, but body wise, I would probably pick John Cena over Zachary Levi. Now, that's not saying that Zachary Levi is a bad choice. Obviously, they picked him because they liked something that they saw in Zachary Levi, and if that's the case, then I'm going to trust their judgment. The same has always been said for every comic book character that has hit the big screen. Every time someone new plays Batman, everyone's arms go up in the air. Gal Gadot, when she was cast as Wonder Woman, everyone said that she was too skinny, and everyone now loves Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. So it's just a thing that happens with comic book characters, where everyone just immediately has this knee-jerk reaction of negativity towards someone being casted as the character, and a lot of times people, go back on that. Sometimes they'll say like, "Oh, I never said anything bad about them." No, you did. Just you don't want to admit it now. So I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I like Zachary Levi, for what he does, with the nerd community and stuff like that. But he's not the person that I would automatically pick for Shazam. But more power to him. No pun intended. If he knocks it out of the park. So that's just how I feel. And we do have a Shazam update that I will get to when we talk about the movie news items that came out this week. So there you go. All right, so those were the noteworthy news items that came out after the podcast went up last week. Let's talk about the movie news items that came out this week, starting with, like we always do, trailer talk. So the first trailer we're going to talk about is the new, and I assume this will presumably be the last trailer, the final trailer for Daddy's Home 2, since it does come out very soon. It comes out November 10th. So Paramount Pictures has released their new trailer for Daddy's Home 2. The movie, of course, stars Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg. And in this movie, it will have them celebrate Christmas, and we'll have their father characters in John Lithgow and Mel Gibson. And I'm pretty sure I mentioned on the podcast now that I barely watched the first one earlier this year, and I didn't mind it. I thought it was pretty good. So I'm kind of looking forward to this one. The movie looks kind of funny. I think the chemistry definitely between Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg is really cool and really great. And then you just add in John Lithgow and Mel Gibson, who are complete opposite sides of the spectrum, especially from the trailers. So it doesn't look too bad. So, and it's the holiday season now. Halloween's over, unfortunately. Hopefully everyone had a very happy Halloween. But the holiday season's coming up, and it's our first Christmas movie of the year. So why not? So let's move on to the next trailer. The new trailer for The Disaster Artist has been released. A24 has released the new trailer for the movie that will tell the true story of the attempt to get the infamous cult film The Room, aka one of the worst movies ever made, according to many people, made. The movie will be directed by James Franco, and he will also star in the film as Tommy Wiseau. I think that's how you say his last name. I always mispronounce his last name. Always. Always, always, always. I mean, I mispronounce a lot of people's last names on the podcast, but he is always one that I always mispronounce. But anyway, Franco will play Wiseau in the movie, where he will play him as he attempts to get the room made and try to live the Hollywood dream, as he says. The movie stars Dave Franco, and this trailer is very different from the last trailer. The last trailer played up a lot of the humor, but it also played up a lot of the kind of living, like I mentioned, the Hollywood dream. So it's kind of narrated over his voice, and him trying to convince everyone that this is how you make a movie and this is how you do it and all this. And this trailer is very different. And this trailer it does focus a little bit more on the drama side of stuff. You see Franco's character arguing with I don't know who Dave Franco's supposed to play. Yes, his real life brother's in the movie. They don't play brothers in the movie, but they play friends. But Dave Franco's in the movie, and I don't know who he's supposed to play. I don't know who he is in real life. But who he's supposed to be, he's supposed to be playing someone in real life, but I don't know who he's playing. But you see the two having arguments a lot in this trailer. In the last trailer, they looked like they were playing the best of friends, and nothing can get between them. And here, it looks very different. Here, it looks like they're arguing. There's even a point when they're in the park, and it looks like they're arguing with each other. And Tommy, James Franco, he says, there's the camera's right there. He's like, yeah, that's where you wanted it. You always want the camera on you. So it looks pretty good. And so far, from all the reviews that have been coming out from the film festival circuit where this premiered, people have been saying that this is a very good movie. It's a very good film, and that it may even get some Oscar buzz. So there is that to consider when you're watching this. And I don't know if you need to see The Room. I haven't read any of the reviews, but I really hope you don't need to see The Room to appreciate what this movie is. And I highly doubt you will. I mean, there'll probably be little Easter eggs of people who have seen the movie to understand. And maybe if you've seen the movie, you kind of know maybe what the scene that they're filming has context in, because, obviously you kind of know what the final product is of that. But I don't know. I have not seen The Room. I have not driven myself to see it. I kind of don't want to see it. But I'll see. The movie's still a ways away. Maybe someone will convince me to watch it. I don't know. All right, so let us move on. The Disaster Artist comes out December 1st in a limited release, and then gets a wide release the week after on December 8th. So you can look forward to that. All right, so the next trailer we're going to talk about, there's actually two trailers, but we're going to focus on one of them. Is the first full trailer for the Margot Robbie-led film I, Tonya. The movie is a dark comedy, and it's basically a biopic of Tonya Harding, who is played by Margot Robbie in the movie, and chronicles her life as a figure skater from her rough upbringing to Olympic infamy, tracking the path that led to the violent incident with Nancy Kerrigan. If you don't know anything about Tonya Harding or Nancy Kerrigan, you can easily just put their names in Google and you'll just get a bunch of stories about that. Or you can just watch the movie. I don't know, whichever one you prefer. The film premiered at the International Film Festival to many, many rave reviews. And so far, the two trailers that have been released, the teaser and now this, they released two versions of this trailer. There's the green band trailer and then there's the red band trailer. Of course, the red band trailer has a lot of swearing, but they're both pretty much the same. Obviously, the red band trailer shows more language, but they both look really good. They make this movie look fantastic. They're, again, since it is Oscar season now, this movie is getting some Oscar buzz, more specifically for Allison Janney, who plays Tonya Harding's mother in the movie, and it looks like she wasn't a very pleasant person, put it that way. There is a scene involving a knife. Leave it at that. And I think there's even some Oscar buzz even for Robbie as well. But I don't know. But I know a lot of the stories and outlets that I've been seeing, everyone has just been mentioning Janney's name. So maybe Allison Janney will be one of the forerunners, or front runners, I should say, for the Oscars. But we'll see. But yeah, the movie also stars Sebastian Stan. He plays Margot Robbie's husband at the time when this is all going on. So yeah, I mean, this looks really, really good. And I think I mentioned last time when we talked about the movie, it's going to be told through it's going to be told through interviews. So we're gonna have interviews, and then they're gonna intercut scenes that happen at that point, and you actually get to see a little bit of that in the sorry about that. I don't know if you heard that. That was my phone. You get to see a little bit of that in the trailer, because there's a scene in the trailer where Margot Robbie has a shotgun and she says, "I never did this." And there's no context to what she's referring to, unless the movie is being told through interviews. So that's kind of cool. So it should be interesting to kind of see how that plays out. So I, Tonya will be released later this year. It will be released on December 8th. So you can mark that down if you want to go check that out. And finally, the last trailer we're going to talk about, at least of course at the time of this recording, is the Matt Damon-led film Downsizing. Paramount Pictures has released a new trailer for the movie. It is directed by Alexander Payne, who directed films like Sideways, The Descendants, and Nebraska. The film takes place in the future, where scientists have created a method of shrinking people down and creating a new economy where they can live and prosper with no financial problems. Damon will play a financially strapped man who decides to downsize with his wife, played by Kristen Wiig in the movie. But at the last minute, his wife bails on the procedure and leaves him by himself. And that's kind of the synopsis. But in the trailer, it looks like there's a lot more going on. So it looks like maybe half the movie will be about, or not, maybe not. I'm just assuming. So at least the beginning of the movie will be them, going through the process, and him going through the process, and then him finally landing there and getting accustomed to this new land. They did have a name for it. I can't remember what it was, what they called it in the trailers. But in the trailers, at least in the trailer, I should say, there's only one trailer, you kind of get the sense that there's something going on within this new town, and that Matt Damon is trying to figure out what's going on. It looks like there's sick people or something to that. It looks like there are sick people, but it looks like there's maybe something else going on. And it looks like Matt Damon's character is the only one who wants to kind of really want to do something about it. So it's kind of interesting how that works out, or how it's going to work out. But it looks pretty good, and it's nice to see a sci-fi movie where it's set in the future, and the world's not destroyed or anything, or there's not bunch of people trying to kill other people for whatever reason. So, we'll see how that turns out. It looks pretty good though. So you got Matt Damon, you got Kristen Wiig, you got Jason Sudeikis, you got Christoph Waltz, Neil Patrick Harris is in the movie. But everyone that has seen this movie has said one of the standouts of this movie, and the person that steals this movie, is an actress named Hong Chow. She obviously is not known here in America, but apparently she's done some films overseas in her native country. But apparently she steals this movie. So be on the lookout for her when this movie is released. And that's it for Trailer Talk, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to go check out any of these trailers, remember you saw them and you want to go watch them again, you can. All the links to the trailers will be down below in the description/show notes area. Alright, so we're going to talk about this week's news items. The first one we're going to talk about is actually a rumor that is going on. And it's a rumor because no one has confirmed anything, and I don't think anyone will actually confirm anything about this news item. So, the rumor going around right now is that Ron Howard reshot around 80% of Solo, a Star Wars story. Now, this is according to an episode of the Resistance broadcast, where they said that Ron Howard potentially reshot 80% of Solo, a Star Wars story, when he came on board to take over from Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Now, if you remember, when it was first reported that Ron Howard would be coming in to take over, the plan was that he was going to be he was going to shoot the remaining 3 weeks that were left. He was going to be doing reshoots, and he would be doing some additional photography that was needed. But then it was reported that the reshoots were taking a lot longer than anyone anticipated, and that kind of led to questions about, well, how much is left of Phil Lord and Chris Miller's original work, and how much would be left, or how much Ron Howard was actually putting in. So that's when the Directors Guild of America started coming in to the news, because according to them, if you at least shoot 50% of a movie, or at least a good chunk of the movie, which Phil Lord and Chris Miller did do, then that would mean that they would be getting the director's credit and not Ron Howard. But now with this new rumor coming out, maybe Ron Howard would be getting the director's credit especially if he reshot 80% of the movie. Now, no one from the cast is talking. The only person that actually mentioned something was Thaddeus Newton from the show Westworld. She's in the movie, and she said that all of her scenes that she shot were with Phil Lord and Chris Miller, and not Ron Howard. Now, maybe she doesn't have a big role in the movie, like some people may assume, and if that's the case, then yes, that would definitely be why she hadn't shot anything with Ron Howard. However, if you remember, Paul Bettany, aka Vision from the Avengers movies, was seen on set, and Ron Howard pretty much said that he would be in the movie. Now, there was a rumor rolling around that Paul Bettany was replacing someone on the cast as well to redo the character. I forgot who it was. I think who was it? I honestly can't remember who it was. It was a guy from The Wire. I know that because I remember what show he's on. I just can't remember his name. Why can't I remember his name? Anyway, he wasn't available to come back and do reshoots, so they ended up replacing him with Paul Bettany, so they had to go back and reshoot a lot of the scenes with him in it. So it's this big thing, and look, Han Solo did not get off to a right start, because they removed Phil Lord and Chris Miller, and then all this just can of worms came out of nowhere and started opening, and all these things were said, and now you have this new rumor coming out that maybe he reshot 80%. Ron Howard reshot 80% of the movie. If that's the case, that is a huge chunk of filming that he did, and who knows if anything was left over. I mean, yes, 80% of the movie, but to be fair, there was 3 weeks left of filming. Now, we don't know what those 3 weeks had involved. So maybe Ron Howard, essentially, if you want to make the argument, Ron Howard reshot everything Phil Lord and Chris Miller did. So maybe there's nothing left of them there. We don't know. And this is becoming a problem with Lucasfilm, where they don't know what the hell they're doing either, directing-wise, because you have these great directors in Phil Lord and Chris Miller who are taken off due to creative differences, but you could have taken care of that before there were 3 weeks left of filming. And you bring it, nothing against Ron Howard. Ron Howard is a director who, has been around for a while, and is a director that many people respect. I personally, Ron Howard films for me are 50-50. The last film he did that I really liked was Rush, and that might have been his last film. Am I wrong about that? I could be wrong about that, but whatever the case, I think maybe The Heart of the Sea was the last film he directed, but Rush was the last movie I know I liked of Ron Howard, which stars Chris Hemsworth and Daniel Brühl from Captain America: Civil War. But anyway, I don't know. This rumor, just, if this is real, then this is just opening the bigger can of worms that was already opened with a Solo Star Wars story. So I don't know. Is it true? I don't know. Is it a big deal? Kind of. Because, again, 80% of a movie. He reshot 80% of a movie. That is extremely huge, especially considering that Phil Lord and Chris Miller did not finish filming. So, all right. So let's move on to other news items that came out. Some of these are very quick, like this news item. Creed 2 finally has a release date. Creed 2 has been in the works. The last time we talked about Creed was that Sylvester Stallone will be writing and directing the movie, something he hasn't done since Rocky Balboa. But he has directed other Rocky movies. But he's pretty much directed all of them with the exception of 2. The first one and I believe 4 or 5. One of them. I forgot which one it was. But he will be directing the movie. Michael B. Jordan will, of course, come back to play Adonis Creed. And Creed 2 will open on November 21st next year. So they're going to start filming soon if they want to reach that release date. So we have some DCU news very quickly. This came out earlier in the week, and then we had an update to another one that was connected to this movie. that came out later this week. It will make sense when I start talking about it. Black Adam gets a new writer. Now, we talked about Zachary Levi playing the title character of Shazam. Black Adam in the comics is Shazam's arch nemesis. So we get a little update here. It's been teeter-tottering between these two projects. So Black Adam has had Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson set to star for a long time. He's been connected to that project for a very long time. Before the DCU even started, he was attached to play Black Adam. So that's been in the works for a very long time. The movie still doesn't have a director. It doesn't have a projected start date, and but it's moving forward because it now has a new writer. So according to the tracking board, Black Adam has hired, and I am going to butcher this name. Black Adam has hired Adam Steitkiel. That could be totally wrong, but that's what I'm going. Steitkiel. That's what I'm going with. Steitkiel. Adam Steitkiel. It's an odd choice because he's a comedic writer. He has written films like Due Dates, Adam and the Chipmunks, The Road Chip, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Long Haul. He was one of the writers and I believe one of the executive producers for the NBC series Undateable, which actually wasn't that bad, and was also hired recently to write We're the Millers 2. So it's a very odd choice, especially considering that Black Adam has always been seen as this very dark character. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean the movie will be a comedy, but knowing Johnson, he can handle both action and comedy. It wouldn't be completely odd if they went the comedic route, although I highly doubt they will go the full comedic route. They'll probably just want someone to have knowledge of having, comedic beats so that they can put it into the movie, so it's not just all, dark and gritty like the DCU has been so far, with of course the exception of Wonder Woman, and who knows how Justice League is going to turn out. But yeah, there you go. So Black Adam has a new writer, and going off that, Shazam, like I mentioned, the teeter-totter, Shazam is eyeing an actor for a villain in the movie, Mark Strong. Now, Mark Strong is sticking to the DCU world. Now, Mark Strong was recently just seen in Kingsman: The Golden Circle. He played Merlin. He was also in the first film. But he's sticking to the DC world because he played Sinestro in the failed Green Lantern movie that came out years ago. You remember that? I do. Although Mark Strong was probably the best thing in Green Lantern as Sinestro, but he never got to really play Sinestro because there was never a sequel. So anyway, Mark Strong sticking to the DC world. So he is in talks to play the villain character of Dr. Sivana. I think that's how you say his name. The character in the comics is a respected and brilliant scientist who turns evil after trying to save his family with science, but then turns to magic. In the comics, there's even a storyline where he finds the tomb where Black Adam is stored. So maybe that's how they introduce Black Adam in the Shazam movie with that. He's also able to deduce that Billy Batson can turn into Shazam, and starts to threaten Billy's real life instead of his superhero life. So it'd be interesting to kind of see if they play around with that. Now, when it comes to Strong, I'm a huge fan of Mark Strong. I think he's probably one of the most underrated actors out there. He can handle pretty much anything he's thrown at you. I mean, he can make a Green Lantern movie good, or at least that particular Green Lantern movie. But this is kind of cool. I'm not gonna lie. And when you look at the character, I saw a screenshot of the character, and then they put him side by side with Mark Strong. He looks a lot like Mark Strong, so that would be perfect casting if they get Mark Strong. So anytime Mark Strong gets work, I'm excited for it. So hopefully this turns out in Mark Strong's favor. All right, so let's move on to the next movie news item. Now, this one is we were talking about rumors earlier. Now, this one is different because it's more of the will it happen kind of category. So, A Lethal Weapon 5. Yes, you heard me. A Lethal Weapon 5 is currently being discussed. Not only that, it looks to bring back the original actors of Mel Gibson and Danny Glover, along with director Richard Donner. So, you know what? Maybe you guys are a little too old for this shit, because this is ridiculous. Now, anyway, I made that joke on my Facebook page, and I'm sticking to it. Reports from Deadline. Deadline was the one that broke this news item. That Deadline reports that another Lethal Weapon movie is being talked about. However, it won't be a reboot or a remake, but instead it will bring back, like I mentioned, Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, and director Richard Donner. Now, the scenario, according to the outlet, will have Donner directing the movie, with Lethal Weapon 4 writer Channing Gibson coming back to write the movie. All four are interested in returning, but the question is whether or not Warner Brothers actually wants to do it. Now, the franchise is, of course, being kept alive with the TV series on Fox, which is very popular with fans who watch it. I don't watch it, but I heard from some other people that it's kind of good. So I'll take your word for it. But I don't know how I feel about another Lethal Weapon movie. Look, first of all, like I mentioned, these guys are too old for this shit. Danny Glover and Mel Gibson are not the same age they were when they made the last Lethal Weapon movie. The last Lethal Weapon movie was made years ago. It's been like at least 15 years ago. If not, I didn't check that, but I'm pretty sure it's at least 15 years ago. And Donner, by the way, Richard Donner, he's pushing 90. He's like 87 years old right now, or 88. So I don't know if that's, the best move to do. And Donner hasn't directed a movie since 2006. The last movie he directed was 16 Blocks with Bruce Willis. I had to look that up because I didn't know that. But I don't know how I feel about another Lethal Weapon movie. Like I mentioned, Gibson and Glover are older now, and they, I can only assume that the reason they would do another one is to just keep the film franchise alive. So they would do something where, it would be the kind of movie where it would be the old guard versus the new guard, and them kind of passing the torch a little bit. I don't know. I mean, it's Hollywood, so anything can happen, but I don't know if this is the best idea. That's just me. I mean, again, maybe once I see it, I'll be like, yeah, this movie's awesome. But I'm not saying that right now. Let's put it that way. All right, so let's move on to the next movie news item. This, not necessarily really surprising. So Brett Ratner's Hugh Hefner biopic with Jared Leto has been postponed, halted, canceled, whatever word you want to use. It's not happening, basically. So, for those of you that don't know, Brett Ratner has been in the news lately. He has been accused of sexual harassment and misconduct from multiple actresses, and he is just the new name on a big list. Has been Kevin Spacey's on that list. Dustin Hoffman was recently accused as well. I believe there was another director that was accused. I can't remember his name at the moment, but Brett Ratner is now the latest person to be accused of sexual harassment and misconduct by actors, by actresses and by other people as well. So when that came up, the thinking was, okay, what happens to everything now? Obviously the Weinstein Company has pulled every movie they have from their lineup for the rest of the year, so they no longer have movies coming out for the rest of the year because they're dealing with this Harvey Weinstein thing, and there's talks about them selling off parts of the company to someone. There's Quentin Tarantino, which we'll talk about a little bit later on the podcast. I think he's the next movie news item. I could be wrong about that. No, he's not the we'll be talking about Quentin Tarantino. He's moving his next movie to another studio, and he has been absolutely loyal to the Weinstein Company and Miramax because they're basically where he had his start. So he's gone. Now he's going to be moving. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But now with Brett Ratner, his next project, assuming this was his next project, has been canceled. It was the biopic on Hugh Hefner. Playboy Enterprises released a statement saying they are no longer working. They told Deadline, who broke the story, that they are putting the project on hold until, I believe their wording was, I actually have it here in front of me, able to review the situation further, end quote. So they pretty much put a pause on that, on his project. And Brett Ratner's been working on this project since 2007. He's had his hands on the Hugh Hefner story since 2007. And he has not been able to do it at all. And the last time we heard about this project was that Jared Leto had been attached to to star in the movie, because Brett Ratner and apparently Jared Leto are very close friends, and Brett Ratner was at the Playboy House a lot apparently from those first reports, which is the reason why they gave him the okay to do this. But here's where the other part of the story comes for this. Jared Leto apparently was never attached to the project, because according to Leto's representative, Leto was never attached, saying, quote, Jared Leto is not and was not attached to the Brett Ratner directed Hugh Hefner film, nor will he be working with him in the future. Early reports were incorrect and are not confirmed by his representatives, end quote. So, there you go. Jared Leto was never attached to the project, which I find fairly surprising, but again, it was never officially said by anyone. Brett Ratner kind of just came out and said, yeah, Jared Leto was going to be in the movie. That was kind of it. So, again, I'm not too surprised that this project is canceled, especially considering the allegations against Hefner coming out. But what is a little surprising is the Leto part, because he was never attached to play the character anyway. So that one's pretty big for me, honestly. So, there you go. I'm not going to talk about Brett Ratner anymore, because he's a scumbag if he actually did all those things that they said he did. So, move on to the next movie news item, which is about the live action, quote unquote, live action adaptation of The Lion King, because it has now revealed its full cast and its new synopsis. So, Disney will be doing a live, quote unquote, live action adaptation of The Lion King, bringing in the technology they used for The Jungle Book and applying it to The Lion King. So it's live action in the sense that it's not going to be animated, but it's not really going to be live action because it's very hard to work with animals, especially lions, because they're kind of lazy sometimes. And you probably can't train a lion to do a movie for you. So it's going to be quote unquote live action using the Jungle Book technology they used. So the official cast, and some of these cast members have already been announced, but now they're officially signed on. There's some surprising names on here. So Donald Glover will voice Simba, the adult Simba. Seth Rogen and Billy Eichner will voice Pumbaa and Timon, the two, of course, people that help Simba grow up in the jungle. John Oliver will voice Zazu, the bird. Chiwetel Ejiofor will voice Scar, of course, essentially the villain of the movie, unless you look at it from the perspective where Scar is the hero and Mufasa was the villain, if you follow that theory online. Alfre Woodard will voice Simba's mother. John Caney will voice Rafiki. And James Earl Jones will reprise his role as Mufasa, because he wants to make not only children cry, but now he wants to make grown men cry, because you know that scene's going to be in the movie, and you know we're all going to cry, and if you don't cry, you're dead inside. I'm dead inside, and I still cried during that scene. I don't know why I got so passionate and angry about that, but whatever. But the surprising name for this cast is that Beyonce will voice Nala. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Beyonce voicing the character. Jon Favreau, who will direct the movie, he also directed The Jungle Book. He had talked about wanting to get Beyonce to voice Nala, and there was talks about scheduling conflicts. Beyonce had just given birth at the time, or was just about to give birth at the time to her babies, and there was talks about not getting her. And but apparently Beyonce was always, in every report that came out about who was joining the cast of Lion King, Beyonce was always right there at the bottom, still in talks to play Nala, and now she is officially going to play the character. The hyenas will be in the movie, so you don't have to worry about them taking away something. They will be voiced by Eric Andre, Florence Kasuma from Black Panther, and Keegan-Michael Key. Now, the synopsis for the new movie reads as follows. From Disney live action, director Jon Favreau's new The Lion King journeys to the African savannah where a future king is born. Simba idolizes his father, King Mufasa, and takes to heart his own royal destiny. But not everyone in the kingdom celebrates the new cub's arrival. Scar, Mufasa's brother, and former heir to the throne, has plans of his own. The battle for Pride Rock is ravaged with betrayal, tragedy, and drama, ultimately resulting in Simba's exile. With the help from a curious pair of newfound friends, Simba will have to figure out how to grow up and take what is rightfully his. So there you go. The Lion King will open on July 19th of 2019, so you can look forward to that. I'm looking forward to this. This cast is overly impressive. It's a very awesome cast. Jon Favreau is a very capable director, and if he's going to bring what he did to the Jungle Book, which, by the way, I had no intention of watching the Jungle Book, I had no expectations to go watch the Jungle Book, I ended up loving the Jungle Book. So I can't wait to see what they're able to pull together for the Lion King. All right, so let's move on to the next movie news item of the week. I mentioned Quentin Tarantino earlier. We're going to talk about Quentin Tarantino now. Quentin Tarantino is looking for a new film studio for his latest film, and there's some new details on the project as well. Like I mentioned, Quentin Tarantino was very loyal and dedicated. All of his movies came from Miramax, which was owned by the Weinstein Company. But after the accusations came out, Tarantino said, I'm done, I'm out of here, I'm taking my film somewhere else, and that is the case. Because Deadline reports the director is letting major studios, with the exception of Disney, I'm not kidding, they said with the exception of Disney, probably for obvious reasons. Disney probably wouldn't want to direct a Quentin Tarantino movie anyway, or to distribute a Tarantino movie anyway, and streaming services, so like Netflix and Amazon, they're not going to be able to read it either, have read the latest draft of his new script, which is being referred to as number 9, which is the 9th film in Quentin Tarantino's filmography. Now, when the movie was first announced, it was said that it would be a movie about Charles Manson. However, Deadline learned that the movie will be set during the late 60s, early 70s Los Angeles, and it has a strong commercial appeal, which means it will go everywhere. Instead, because when you think Tarantino movies, they usually have a certain niche audience. You don't usually think of Tarantino being this broad scope. Everyone can see his movie. I mean, not everyone, because most of his movies all of his movies are rated R. So not everyone's gonna see a Quentin Tarantino movie. But this one apparently has commercial appeal, so it will not just target Tarantino fans. It will target other people as well. And it can be compared. If it has to be compared to a certain script, it can be compared to Pulp Fiction, which is arguably one of Tarantino's, biggest films to date. It will have a similar budget to Django Unchained, and the deal could be reached within the next 2 weeks. So we can be talking about this project very soon on the podcast in the future. However, the big thing is that the movie isn't necessarily about Charles Manson himself. In fact, the way Deadline puts it, it is, quote, akin to calling Inglourious Basterds a movie about Adolf Hitler, where the Nazi leader was only in a scene or two. So it's not about Charles Manson specifically, but it will follow Manson's followers, more particularly the murder of Sharon Tate, because that is still happening. The outlet did confirm early reports when this project was first announced that Margot Robbie has been asked to play a murder victim from the Manson family, Sharon Tate. And Tarantino also has roles. Apparently, he's already had conversations with people like Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Samuel L. Jackson. However, casting commitments have not been made so far, which tends to happen. The movie doesn't have a studio yet, but sometimes a script will have a certain actor attached, and studios will buy that script with that actor attached because of the script and, of course, the actor. But that is not the case here. The aim before Tarantino started shipping off the movie to other studios was to start filming next year around the summer. However, again, it doesn't have a studio yet, so we don't know. Again, the aim was to start filming next year with the possible release date of 2019. If that happens, we'll obviously keep you guys updated on that. But if it happens, I'll be very surprised. I won't be very surprised. Quentin Tarantino is known for sticking to release dates, so we'll see how that works out. This is a pretty big deal because again, Quentin Tarantino has all of his films have pretty much come out from Miramax and the Weinstein Company, so it's going to be a little weird to see another studio pop up in front of a Quentin Tarantino movie. But I applaud Quentin Tarantino for doing this. He's not the only director either. There's been a lot of other directors that have been dropping out of Weinstein Company movies and trying to get the rights to their movies, backed up. So we'll see. We'll see how this works out for Quentin Tarantino. Again, we'll talk about if the deal is reached within the next couple weeks. We'll obviously be talking about that on the podcast. All right, so let's move on to the final news item of the podcast. At least, again, at the time of this recording. Tyrese. That's right. Tyrese has yet again posted something about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and the Fast and the Furious franchise on his Instagram, because apparently he can't control himself. Now, if you remember, it was earlier last month that Tyrese made multiple posts on Instagram, mostly venting his frustrations with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and the long in development sequel that Universal announced would be that would be about Dwayne Johnson's character Hobbs and Jason Statham's character Deckard Shaw. Now, the spin-off actually delayed the 9th Fast and the Furious movie to 2020, with the spin-off movie taking its place in 2019. And Tyrese, by the way, before that little outburst, he had mentioned something before then, but now he's venting his frustrations even more. And by the way, this drama is really one-sided, because Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has not really mentioned it at all. So this is, I'm not going to read his whole caption because his whole caption doesn't make sense. So he said, this is what he said in his last post, saying, quote, "Hello world." And by the way, there's a lot of dots in between all these words, so I'm just going to lower it down. "Hello world. Hello loyal fans and loved ones from our," he puts "our" in quotation marks and not quotation marks, all capitalized, Fast universe. "I'm sorry to announce that if Dwayne," he spells it wrong again, "is in Fast 9, there will be no more Roman Pierce. You mess with my family and my daughter's survival, I mess with yours. Close your eyes, dude, you're a clown." Now, again, there's more to the caption. I'm not going to read it because most of it doesn't make sense to me. So I've read it a dozen times and it just does not make sense to me, especially the whole "you mess with my daughter's survival" thing. I don't get that. But you can see his point that he's trying to make the ultimatum. You either have me or you have The Rock. Now, again, there was drama on the last film between Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Vin Diesel, and it kind of, back then, if I remember correctly, it sounded like Tyrese was siding with Vin Diesel, from what I remember about that. Of course, The Rock ended up calling a lot of people not a lot of people, but he ended up calling certain people, didn't name anyone, but he ended up calling certain people on the set of the Fate of the Furious candy asses, which of course is his favorite phrase in WWE days. This is just dumb. This is I mentioned this last time we talked about the drama, and I don't like talking about drama on the podcast because, I mean, yeah, sure, it's fun to talk about, but this is just dumb. This is the last time I'm going to talk about Tyrese, unless there is a news item that says Tyrese is no longer attached to the Fast and the Furious movies. This is the last time I'm going to talk about Tyrese. I'm only mentioning this because, first of all, it doesn't make sense. And I mentioned this the last time that we talked about Tyrese on the podcast when he took a shot at Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. One, he can probably tear you apart with one arm. He could probably tear anybody apart with one arm. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Two, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is actually going out and working on a shit ton of projects. And he made his own brand. He has his own production company. He has all these things going for him. He's one of the most busiest men in Hollywood working today. Are all his movies good? That's up to you. I thoroughly enjoy a lot of his movies. I'm not saying all of the movies he's done have been good, but they're enjoyable, to say the least. Tyrese, on the other hand, is not Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson because he does not have a ton of projects that he can fall back on. He doesn't have another franchise he can fall back on. Not really. Tyrese hasn't done anything film-wise. The last thing he was in that I remember was a very tiny role, basically a cameo role in Ride Along 2. That was the last thing I remember seeing him in, besides the Fate of the Furious. Outside the Fast and the Furious franchise, the last thing I remember seeing him in was a cameo role in Ride Along 2. And it was at the very beginning of the movie, so he was gone. He was gone for the rest of the film. That was it. I don't see Tyrese, being, on a wish list or a call list for any other roles that have been reported on. I mean, I know Tyrese is, pushing hard to play Green Lantern in the Justice League movies, but that's it. He has no other films. If you going to the, mess with my, child's survival, my daughter's survival, start booking other roles. this just seems to me like he's bitter. It doesn't come off as him being protective of the Fast and the Furious movie, because if you want to use the, he's been he's been in the franchise longer than The Rock has. Yes, he has, by one movie. And if that's the case, he's also been in one movie longer than Vin Diesel, because Vin Diesel wasn't in Fast and Furious 2. It just seems dumb to me that he's taking this. He's just going with, if you don't want to be in the movies, just say you don't want to be in the movies. Don't make this drama be like, oh, I'm going to give you an ultimatum. If The Rock's in the movie, then I'm gone. Guess what? That's an easy choice for me, and probably for a lot of other people, because we want to see The Rock. It's just dumb. He just sounds bitter. That's how it comes off to me. If there's something else going on behind the scenes, then fine. Whatever. Then let us in on that. But what you're posting, it just sounds like he's bitter, and I don't care. And this is the last time I will be mentioning Tyrese again, unless it's announced that he is no longer part of the Fast and the Furious franchise. Which, if that's the case, then bye bye. Sure, I enjoy the Roman character every now and then, but just bye bye. I can do without you. All right. I don't know why I got so angry in that. I don't know. It's just every once in a while, it's surprising news item that gets me angry, and this was the one. All right, so let's move on to... That's it. Actually, that's it. That's all the movie news I got for you guys, at least at the time of this recording. So thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. It's not over. I'm just saying, that just came out. So if you want to go check out some stuff, obviously, more movie news items are over at the Facebook page, facebook.com/moviepit. That's facebook.com/moviepit. I want to thank you guys so much for going over there and giving me a like. I'm just assuming you're going over there and giving me a like, so I thank you. Thank you for that. I also have my WordPress account down there, where I do spoiler-free written reviews of all the movies not all the movies, but most of the movies that I watch. A lot of the big movies I will review. But that's down there as well. Also, while you're down there, you can go check out my Instagram account and my Twitter account. That's all down there. My personal Twitter and Instagram are down there. Also, the Twitter page that I made for the Facebook page, or for the podcast, I should say, is down there as well. So the Facebook page is for the podcast as well. That's kind of where I got confused. So, that's all down there. And again, the links to the trailers are all down there as well. And whatever else I find really cool, I'll link down there as well. I'll have a Collider has this really cool 30 things or 20 things or something like that from the set of Pacific Rim Uprising. That's kind of cool. So if you want to know a little bit more details on Pacific Rim Uprising, that's down there. That's worth a read if you want to go check that out. All right, so let's move on to this week's releases, shall we?
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Limited releases this week. We have quite a few limited releases this week. I was very surprised how many limited releases we have. So the first one is My Friend Dahmer, based on the graphic novel. Before Jeffrey Dahmer became a notorious serial killer, he was a shy, alcoholic teen who never quite fit in. The film stars Ross Lynch, who plays Jeffrey Dahmer, Anne Hesh, Dallas Roberts, and Alex Wolff, who plays Jeffrey Dahmer's best friend in real life, and actually based this graphic novel around Jeffrey Dahmer. I didn't know about this movie until just recently, so I really don't have anything to really... I didn't even know there was a graphic novel about Jeffrey Dahmer. That's kind of interesting, I guess. But yeah, so there's that. Next limited release is Last Flag Flying, directed and written, or co-written, I should say, by Richard Linklater. 30 years after they served together in Vietnam, a former Navy corpsman, Larry Doc Shepard, reunites with his old buddies, former Marines Sal Neon and Reverend Richard Moeller, to bury his son, a young Marine killed in the Iraq War. The film is led by Steve Carell, Bryan Cranston, and Lawrence Fishburne. I've seen the trailer now a few times for this. It looks really good. It really does. You got three awesome actors: Lawrence Fishburne, Steve Carell, and Bryan Cranston. Their chemistry, at least from the trailers, looks amazing. It just looks like a really cool, drama movie where it's just following these three guys who served together and who are still friends to this day. So it looks not too bad. This movie is a spiritual sequel to another movie with a similar concept. I just can't remember what the movie was, and I didn't mark it down either. but it is a spiritual sequel. This is what Linklater has said, that it's a spiritual sequel to another movie that has been done before with a kind of similar, very similar subject. So there's that. All right, so let's move on to the next limited release, which is Lady Bird, written and directed by Greta Gerwig, the adventures of a young woman living in Northern California for a year. The film stars Saoirse Ronan. I think that's how you say your first name. Everyone says her name differently, but I say it's Saoirse Ronan, Laura Metcalf, and Tracy Letts. This movie looks really good. The trailer popped up, I believe last month or 2 months ago, something like that, and it looks awesome. You know, Ronan is pretty much great in anything she does, so I really can't wait to see what she does here with this. It looks awesome. It looks like her character is really funny and just witty and very has a very great sense of humor. And there's that great scene in the trailer with her and her mom, and they're arguing. They're at this store and they're arguing. And all of a sudden, the mom just pulls out this dress, and they just start, and it's like they were never fighting in the first place. It's really great. It's really cool. I'm a huge fan of Saoirse Ronan. I'm a huge fan of Greta Gerwig. So I cannot wait to watch Lady Bird in theaters. It is getting a limited release. Hopefully, it gets a rollout. But that's what I'm looking forward to this week as well. So your last limited release of the week, which is a movie that I have been looking forward toward for a while, and it's a movie that I can't believe is only getting a limited release. It is Blade of the Immortal. It is based off a manga of the same name. Never read the manga, but the only reason I'm excited for this is because it is directed by Takashi Miike. And Takashi, if you don't know who Takashi Miike is, look up his films, because they are just, they're amazing. I don't know why I did that. I've never done that before. Anyway, this is his 100th film. His 100th film. This is an amazing accomplishment. And Takashi Miike, by the way, he is just a bloody, violent director. So I just want to warn you that if you look up any of his movies, they are just bloody and violent. At least the ones I have seen. So the movie follows a highly skilled samurai who has been cursed with immortality after a legendary battle. And thinking that killing evil will regain his soul, he helps a young girl who is looking to avenge the murder of her family from another legendary expert swordsman. This movie looks, again, it looks straight up like Takashi Miike. 13 Assassins, Ichi the Killer. There's two movies that I can just, off the top of my head, that I will give you to look up for Takashi Miike. And he is just an awesome director. And the fact that this is his 100th film, the way it looks is just amazing. The CGI looks a little wonky because there's a scene in the trailer where it looks like someone cuts off his hand and it kind of grows back together. It looks a little wonky, but it is based off a manga, so you can forgive that as well. But this just looks really cool. Just to be honest, it looks awesome. Samurais. I mean, come on, I'm a guy. What do you expect from me? What do you expect from me? All right, so let's move on to this week's wide releases. We had one wide release already released this week. How many times do I say released? No, I'm not gonna say that. I'm not gonna do it. Start a drinking game. How many times I can say release in one breath? No, I'm not gonna do that. So we already had one movie that was already out. I stopped myself. You heard that, right? I stopped myself. Bad Moms Christmas. A Bad Moms Christmas has already been out in theaters for a couple days. The three underappreciated and overburdened moms, played once again by Mila Kunis, Catherine Hahn, and Kristen Bell, rebel against the challenges and expectations of the Super Bowl for Moms Christmas. The movie also stars Jay Hernandez, Justin Hartley, Cheryl Hines, Kristen Barinski, I think that's how you say her last name. I always mispronounce her last name as well, and Susan Sarandon. I saw the first Bad Moms. I was like many of you who thought the first Bad Moms was going to be this really dumb comedy where it was just like, everyone needs a paycheck. But no, I actually really ended up enjoying Bad Moms. So I'm looking forward to a Bad Moms Christmas. Why not? You know, it's a comedy, comedy movies. You got three great leading ladies. You got some raunchiness thrown in there. Apparently this movie is a lot more raunchier than the first one. I don't know how they're gonna do that, but apparently it is. So I'm looking forward to it. Why not? It's you need a comedy, and it's the holiday again. It's past Halloween. It's the holiday season now. It's coming up faster than we can imagine. People are already putting up Christmas decorations and Christmas trees everywhere. Let Thanksgiving have its day. Come on. At least wait until midway through November to start putting up Christmas stuff. That's just me. That's just me being a grouchy old man. So yeah, there you go. Bad Moms Christmas. has already been released. But your other wide release this week, which we'll talk about a little bit more, spoiler-wise, a little bit later, is Thor Ragnarok. Imprisoned, the mighty Thor finds himself in a lethal gladiatorial contest against the Hulk, his former ally. Thor must fight for survival and race against time to prevent the all-powerful Hela from destroying his home and the Asgardian civilization. So this one is, it's good. I'm just gonna say it again. It's good. I saw it last night. I'll get into it a little bit more later, after we're done with everything. So once the podcast is over, I'll get to the spoiler review of it. But this movie has been in a lot of people's radar. It's been a highly anticipated movie for a lot of people since the first teaser came out, since everyone started seeing stuff, since they found out that Mark Ruffalo was going to be in it with the Hulk. So you got Cate Blanchett playing the villain. You got Tessa Thompson playing Valkyrie. Now, there was some reports that came out this week that Tessa Thompson's character, Valkyrie, was a LGBTQ character. She was going to be I believe, she was going to be a bisexual character. And they ended up cutting a scene that, fully fronted showed that she was bisexual, but they ended up cutting it due to time constraints. Apparently, there was the scene where it shows that she is bisexual. The scene, it's an exposition scene in the movie, and apparently it was cut. Tessa Thompson did an interview with this, and she said it. She said basically what she said, that it showed that she was bisexual, but the scene itself was a very big talky. It was an exposition scene. And apparently, the flow of her showing that she was bisexual and what they were trying to accomplish with the scene itself wasn't blending well together, and they had to cut the scene, or at least cut that part of it. So everyone knows that she's a bisexual anyway. I mean, all the fans will know that she is bisexual anyway. And there's also a scene that's teased in the trailer where Hela is attacking the Valkyries are attacking Hela, and she attacks them back. Apparently, there's a little tidbit there that there's a little more story to that in a particular scene, and in a particular camera cut that is done between her character and someone else. So I'll let you assume what that scene is, and you can probably assume what that is as well. But stuff like that happens, and I know people are going to be upset about it, but stuff like that does happen. Sometimes things are cut for flow and for time issues. So hopefully people don't use that as a way to just attacking the film in general, because it's been getting a lot of great buzz. Everyone who has seen it so far has said it's awesome. And it is awesome. I can account to that. It is very good. I will. So that's it. The Thor Ragnarok. Yeah, go watch it. I'll just say that. That's my early review. Go watch it. So Thor Ragnarok and Bad Moms Christmas are your wide releases for the week. Your limited releases this week are My Friend Dahmer, Last Flag Flying, Lady Bird, and Blade of the Immortal. And that's it. That's all the releases for this week, guys. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast this week. I always appreciate it. I do. I always appreciate what you guys listen, even if I'm just talking to myself. If I am, my voice is just being carried all through the vastness of the internets. And if that's the case, hello internets. How are you? Anyway, I'm doing hand motions and you guys can't see it. So thank you guys so much for joining me on the pod. I just did something that I'm going to cut and you will never find out what it is. Thank you guys so much for joining me on the podcast. I think I'm going crazy. Thank you guys so much for joining me on the podcast this week. I really appreciate it. Go check out the description/show notes area for all the links. Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, my WordPress account. I will have a spoiler-free written review of Thor Ragnarok up this weekend. Actually, no, I won't, because I will be going out of town. I totally forgot about that. I will be going out of town this weekend, so there will not be a written review. Hopefully, maybe I could do one before I leave, but if there isn't, you'll have this to fall back on. Anyway, so yeah, I'm going out of town this weekend. I'm going to Las Vegas. That's right, Las Vegas. So yeah, I'll be doing that. So there will not be hopefully there probably will be, but if there isn't, then I'll definitely do one during the week. But anyway, you'll have this to fall back on anyway. So there you go. So yeah, go check out all the links down below. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, WordPress, all other good stuff. If you're listening to this on YouTube, go check out the SoundCloud as well, and also go check out my iTunes. If you're listening to this on YouTube and it's too inconvenient for you, you'll be like, man, the podcast came out, we'll listen to it on the road or in the car or something. I'm on iTunes. The podcast is on iTunes. Go subscribe on iTunes. It's just, all you gotta do is click that button, and it's free. That's all you gotta do. That's all you gotta do. Go do that, and leave me a review, leave me a rating, and I will shout you out here on the podcast once those pop up. And that'd be really cool if you did that. And if you're listening to this on iTunes, do what I just said. Please leave me a rating and a review and subscribe. I really appreciate you guys if you guys do that. I mean, I can't see it, but I really would appreciate it if you guys did it. So yeah, that's it. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. As you notice, I'm not doing box office predictions anymore because I realized I only do this podcast once a week, and I always leave it to the end. Probably be better if I do it at the beginning, but I didn't do it at the beginning this time. Also because I want to not make this podcast too long, since I'm talking about Thor Ragnarok in a little bit. So I will find something else to put at the very end as a button for for all of this. So yeah, I'm rambling now, so I'm going to save my voice for when I do this review. So thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. Stick around for a spoiler-filled review of Thor Ragnarok. I'm going to do it right now. But if you haven't seen it yet and you want to go in spoiler-free, don't listen to the end of this podcast. So yeah, thank you guys so much for all you who are leaving. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. As always, go have a happy, fun, safe weekend and go watch some movies.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!
Alright. Are they gone? Are they all gone? Yeah? Okay. For those of you who stuck around, this is the spoiler-filled review of Thor Ragnarok. Let's get to it, boys and girls.
So much has happened since I last saw you. I lost my hammer, like yesterday, so that's still pretty fresh. And then I went on a journey of self-discovery, where I met you. Where are we? You have no idea. Hela, the goddess of death, has invaded Asgard.
Oh, I've missed this.
And you and I had a fight recently.
Did I win?
No, I won, easily.
Doesn't sound right.
Well, it's true.
Asgard is dead. And it'll be reborn in my image. I thought you'd be glad to see me.
I need to stop her here and now. To prevent Ragnarok, the end of everything. So I'm putting together a team. Like the old days.
Surprise! This will be such fun.
Hello.
Hi. He's a fighter.
Here we go! I'm not a queen or a monster. I'm the goddess of death. What were you the god of again?
We're the same, you and I. Just a couple of hot-headed fools.
Yeah, same. Hulk like fire, Thor like water,
Well, kind of both like fire.
but Hulk like raging fire, Thor like smoldering fire.
All right, so this is how we're gonna do the review. It is going to be a spoiler-filled review, so you should be aware of that before you continue on. I'm pretty sure I mentioned that before, but it is going to be a spoiler-filled review. Even with my spoiler-filled reviews, I don't, and I think you guys know this by now if you listen to the podcast enough. I don't like to give away everything. I don't like to spoil everything on the podcast, especially when I'm reviewing something like this or talking to someone. even if they ask for spoilers, because I don't know, for me, I still feel like you should go in as empty-minded. Well, that's probably not the right word to use, but as a clean slate when you go into a movie. That didn't sound right. No, it should be a clean slate when you go into a movie, because I think you end up enjoying it better, and you just have a better time and experience while watching something, especially something like this with Thor. Any movie really, but especially something specifically since we're talking about Thor Ragnarok, with Thor Ragnarok. But I just I'm not going to give away everything. There's I would love to talk about certain cameos that happen that I won't talk about. But yeah, obviously the Stan Lee cameo I won't mention because it's Stan Lee and he's pretty much in almost all the Marvel movies. So I will talk about that cameo, but there are other cameos in the movie where I won't necessarily talk about too much. So let's get right to it. Right away, the movie starts off. What we can assume is essentially hell, and the narration that we hear in that first full trailer where it's Thor, kind of addressing the audience. You're probably wondering how I got here. He's actually that is the beginning of the movie, and it's him talking to a skeleton that's there, and what eventually leads into a meeting with Sator or Satar. I forgot how he pronounced. I think it's Sator, but it's Sator, and he's there, and they have this great comedic scene where Thor is still attached to these chains, and he's spinning around, and he's just interrupting Sator when he's trying to give this very menacing speech, and it's really funny, and right there automatically what kind of movie and how the comedy is going to be for the rest of the film. And you have that scene, and then Thor breaks free. They have this great little fight. Thor pretty much just fights a bunch of Satar, however you pronounce it, his army, and you have Immigrant Song playing in the background. And I thought that was really cool that they would actually add in that song. It does play again near the end of the movie where it works to a better effect than it does at the beginning, but it was still kind of cool to see that. So anyway, Thor returns to Asgard after being introduced to Scourge, played by Karl Urban, who was really nice, and he's kind of hamming it up a little bit. He's a little bit more comedic than I thought he was going to be in the movie. He does play a very kind of reluctant character as the movie progresses, and obviously we'll get to that when Hela is introduced, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So Thor returns to Asgard. He sees that Odin, quote unquote Odin, and other Asgardians are watching a play, and it's basically the scene from Thor: The Dark World where Loki, quote unquote dies. We know he doesn't die in that scene, but Thor kind of just sees it, everything, and he kind of knows it's not really Odin, because Odin is a lot more, relaxed, we'll put it, is probably the best way to put it, and Thor, puts an end to Loki's trick. So eventually, Thor, being a little angry at Loki, obviously, not knowing where they put Odin, his father, they end up in New York. And in New York, it's not necessarily this is something that I probably wouldn't have spoiled, but they do spoil it in some of the TV spots, and I believe one of the trailers, I could be wrong, but Thor ends up in New York, and he meets Doctor Strange. And this leads to a great little comedic scene. This actually was one of the little parts of that scene was actually one of the post-credit scenes for what it was. Was it Civil War? I think it might have been Civil War, where Thor meets Doctor Strange, and he's talking about his brother and trying to find his father. So that's pretty much a very extended scene. It's the full scene there. And Strange leads them to Norway, where they find Odin. And Odin is looking, he's not looking as regal as he once was with all the armor and stuff. So he's kind of just looking out into the ocean and saying to Thor and Loki at this point that his time has come, that his wife, Frigga, is calling to him. And, Thor and Loki are looking very concerned, and Odin says when he dies that Hela, played of course by Cate Blanchett, will be released from the prison that he put her in. And Odin of course dies, and very, kind of just scatters away in these little like dusts, and Thor looking a little pissed off. And at first you can probably imagine that you see like this thunderstorm. You can hear it in the background and it gets really dark. And I assumed that it was Hela breaking free from her cage, but it's actually Thor. He gets really angry and Loki's trying to calm him down. And that's when finally the prison that Hela's held in opens up and you see Hela walking out and, she says, oh, he must have died. So she doesn't care. Like right off the bat, you just kind of know how her character is going to interact with all these people. And Hela does pretty much her best Daenerys Targaryen impression from Game of Thrones and says, kneel. And Thor's like, I'm not having any of that. And so he throws the hammer, and of course the much promoted scene and one of the most talked about scenes when that teaser came out for the movie, she breaks the hammer. I'm not going to pronounce the hammer's name because I'm pretty sure I'll get it wrong. But she breaks it. And as Thor and Loki try to get away, through the Bifrost of the portal, amazingly Hela kind of chases after them, and she kind of knocks them both off course and off the portal. And we don't know. I mean, we know where they end up, but we don't know at that point where they end up. And Hela ends up on Asgard, where she pretty much kills two of the Warriors 3. She kills Zachary Levi's character and Ray Stevenson's character pretty much like right off the bat. Like they just see her and she just like throws these knives, which she just ends up like she just has this power of throwing like these massive blades at people, and she just kills them right off the bat. And Scourge is there, and he's, he makes the line that he's just the janitor, and from an earlier scene that there's a payoff to that. And he just kind of reluctantly joins her, because obviously he doesn't want to die. So that is where Hela ends up. And she's on Asgard, and she pretty much just tears down Asgard as soon as she gets there. And this is broken up throughout the movie, so I'm just going to put it all together in terms of structure and timeline, I guess. So Hela basically just kills all the Warriors 3, not including Sif. Sif is not throughout the movie, so Jamie Alexander is not in the film. She doesn't play Lady Sif. They don't even mention Lady Sif, so I guess she's maybe off-world somewhere and doesn't know what's going on, or they couldn't call her or something. They make no mention of where she is, so she's safe somewhere else in the galaxies, in the realms. But the Warriors 3 get killed off, so the only one that's left is Hogun, and he's the only one that actually really puts up a fight, because he even nails a couple hits on Hela, but Hela is ultimately able to take her out. And besides Hogun, she pretty much kills a bunch of other warriors. She basically kills a little small army by herself, and she just makes it really look really cool. And it's there where it could be kind of a throwaway a little bit, but we know that she's the goddess of death, but she does get stabbed in the back with a spear, and it kind of just goes through her, and it doesn't faze her. She moans a little bit, and then she just immediately just turns around, and it looks like she just bitch slaps the guy that stabbed her and sends him flying. So she's right off the bat, you see her, besides breaking the hammer is enough, but seeing her take on this small army by herself is what shows her to be a very formidable villain and enemy to our heroes for the movie. So we go back to Thor. I'm gonna jump around a little bit. The movie jumps around, but I'm gonna jump around. But I'm jumping around, but I'm keeping most of it clustered as much as I can. So we go back to Thor. He ends up on what we know is Sakaar, and he gets taken and captured by Valkyrie, played by Tessa Thompson, who has her own little history, and I'll get to that in a second. And gets taken to the Grand Master, played by Jeff Goldblum, or Jeff Goldblum playing Jeff Goldblum, because he pretty much just hams it up on screen whenever he's on it, to compete in his gladiator games. So he has gladiator games, and the deal that they kind of make after a very lengthy introduction of who this Grandmaster is and how weird he is and how Thor is still a little angry and all this. The deal is if Thor can beat the Grandmaster's champion, Thor can leave, and that's the deal. So Loki, who is there, and apparently time works differently on Sakaar, because when they both got thrown from the portal, Loki has apparently been there for weeks. Thor has been there for a few hours. So that's how the time works. So Loki's there and he's having a blast. He's there, he's partying up with people, he's drinking, and then he sees Thor and he freaks out a little bit, and he tries to tell him, calm down, don't freak out. I'll get us out of this, and I'll try to grease him up, and we can leave. But of course, Thor isn't having it. He's still mad at Loki. He's mad that he doesn't have his hammer anymore. He's in a very crappy situation. So, and Thor at this point, he gets thrown into a holding area with a bunch of the other gladiators. The only one we really get to know is Korg, which is voiced by the director of the movie, Taika Waititi. And he pretty much starts this conversation with Thor, tells him, no one leaves, no one beats the Grandmaster's champion, and it's a really... Korg, by the way, is probably one of my favorite... I wouldn't say he's my favorite character in the movie, but he is one of my favorite characters in the movie. He's a great character, and it's just, he's a comedic character, he has this... He's this big rock monster, and he has like this very high voice. He's like, hey guys, hey, I'm not even gonna do the impression because it's terrible if I try to do it. But he's one of the best characters in the movie for sure. He's not. I don't want to say he's the best character, but he is one of the best characters of the movie. So he talks to Korg and he says, just great comedic scenes of how no one gets off Sakaar. So Thor, getting ready for the Gladiator Games, he sees Valkyrie again, and he learns that Valkyrie is indeed her name. They call her just Valkyrie. I don't know if she has like a real name, but they refer to her as Valkyrie throughout the movie, or a Valkyrie. And at this point, we find out that the Valkyries were this legendary army of Odin and of Asgard, and that they fought Hela at one point. And Thor, again, very comedic scene where he talks about it's about time, that there's a woman army and there's strong women warriors, I'm all for it, and all this great stuff. But Valkyrie isn't having any of it. She'd rather just drink all day and not have a care in the world, and she kind of just leaves Thor there to go get his new look, get his haircut. There's the Stan Lee cameo. He plays the haircut guy with this great mechanical arm, and Thor just he's like, please kind old sir, don't cut my hair. And then we get to the gladiator, to the gladiator arena, I should say. So of course, as we find out, the Grandmaster's champion is indeed the Incredible Hulk, and Hulk's, he's there, and everyone starts cheering for him, and everything's crazy. And of course, we get to see the scene, of Thor, being like, yes, he's a friend from work, and he says, hey Loki, it's Hulk, and Hulk, he didn't know who the grand champion was either. So when he sees the Hulk, he kind of freaks out too, but the Grandmaster stops him from leaving. So they fight, and it's a pretty good fight. It's a pretty lengthy fight. They have a good throw down a little bit. Thor even tries to calm the Hulk down with the Black Widow, little chant, or not chant, but the Black Widow technique. Saying, "Hey, the sun's setting, big guy," and he tries to do it. It looks like it's working, but Thor, or Hulk, I should say, ends up doing what he did to Loki to Thor, and Loki has this great little moment too. But it's and the fight just kind of goes on, and you're wondering, okay, where's this gonna end? And Thor, I don't know how he got to this point, but I think he got knocked loopy, and he sees a vision of Odin. And when he sees Odin, all of a sudden this electricity starts kind of just running through him, and he does pretty much his best Raiden impression from Mortal Kombat. And we see it in the trailers. It's not a giveaway, we see that scene where the electricity is going all around his body. So that we see it more than once in the movie, and he does it for the first time against the Hulk. And it looks like he's about to beat the Hulk when the Grandmaster puts a stop to the fight. So that's kind of where that scene ends. So Thor wakes up, and he realizes that the Hulk has been living the life as the Grandmaster's champion. He has his own room, and he's got all this just impressive stuff. He has his own jacuzzi. He even gets to see a peek of the Hulk's dong, just put it that way. And he tries to convince the Hulk to break out and to go to Asgard with him to stop Hela. But the Hulk, who can speak now in broken sentences, we get a little bit of that in the trailer. Hulk like fire and Thor like water. And he says no, and the Hulk is a little different this time around. We get the same thing. The one of the great things about Thor Ragnarok is they're kind of flipping the characters on their head. So we've seen from the Hulk so far is this rage monster who just destroys everything, and in here we do see that, and he even talks about a little bit. He's like, Hulk's so angry all the time. But we get to see a little bit. We get to see a little bit of a different side of him. He looks like he's a prankster a little bit. He tells Thor to leave at one point, and Thor gets electrocuted by an invisible electric door, and he just sits there and he starts laughing at him. So we get to see that, and then Thor, with Thor throughout the movie, we see him. Thor's always been kind of this more serious character, and he's always been accidentally funny. Well, here we get to see him actually be intentionally funny a lot throughout the movie. So it's very, very cool to kind of see the characters flipped on their head a little bit and something different, which is always nice, which is always good. So it was a risk, but it was a risk that ended up paying off. So anyway, so that's kind of where we leave the characters off for a little bit, and then we go back to Asgard, and Scourge and Hela go to Odin's throne room and reveal that most of the things in there are actually fake, including the Infinity Gauntlet. Now, one of the things that people have been trying to figure out throughout their whole series is, how where will Thanos appear on Asgard to get the Infinity Gauntlet? No, because he already has one, and Hela basically confirms that, saying that the one in Odin's throne room is fake, and she pushes it over, and everything in the room is kind of fake. But Hela also reveals something else to us, to the audience, and to everyone about Odin. That Odin has lied to pretty much everyone, and that Hela, and we already figured this out beforehand, but Hela has a bigger connection to Thor and Odin that we think. And it's, if you know the comics a little bit, the comics won't help you because the history of Hela in the comics is different from the movie. And I actually kind of liked how they changed it. The one thing I didn't kind of like was, and this is, I love this movie, by the way, I really did, but there are a few little minor gripes with the movie, and one of them was the reveal that Hela and Odin have a bigger connection, and how that connection, and how, so basically, I'm not going to ruin the whole thing, but basically Odin and Hela were this unstoppable team, and Hela, we see in not necessarily the prize room, but the throne room, we see that there's this painting, this facade on top of the throne room, and it tells the story of Asgard, and we see this one side, this very peaceful side of Odin, making peace treaties, of Odin, Thor, and Loki, but Hela breaks it, and underneath it we see this different one, essentially probably the real one. We see Odin with this crazy looking helmet, similar to Hela's helmet that she kind of just, I assume she probably just makes out of her hair, because she kind of just brushes her hands across her head and it just comes out. But we see her also in the painting alongside Odin with this army behind them, and it looks like Hela, that doesn't look like it, Hela actually has the hammer, that Thor's hammer that we all know. So we get this little story that Odin wasn't always this great king, this king that's always about peace treaties and everything. Odin was actually essentially this violent king that took everything away from people along with Hela, but he saw Hela's ambition was getting too big and decided that as a king, he should lock her up, and that's essentially what she did. That's essentially what he did, and he became the king that we all saw in the past two in the past two Thor movies. So it's a nice little reveal. I just wish that it would have had a little bit more of a punch to it, because it's just kind of said. It's not, there's no like flashback or anything. It's just said, and she's like, yeah, this happened. That's kind of how it felt like. So, including with that, after that, Hela goes beneath the vault, Odin's vault, and reveals that there's just this tomb, this massive tomb of dead long dead and gone warriors from the wars that we assume that Hela and Odin had, including the big dog that we see in the trailers, which has a name, which is Fenrir. I think that's how you pronounce it. So she brings them all back to life, and the soldiers are basically just zombies, really. And Fenrir is still this big, massive dog, and doesn't look like he's a zombie dog. It just looks like he's just this big, massive dog. During all this, on Asgard, when Hela's doing, remodeling, let's just put it that way, Heimdall, played by, of course, Idris Elba, who has been labeled as a traitor to basically everyone, and Scourge, tells Thor that at the beginning of the movie, because it looks like Scourge is now the new, keeper of the Bifrost, watcher of the Bifrost. He's leading Asgardians to safety. He's basically just protecting them from these threats. And there's a scene in the movie before Thor and everyone else escapes, because that's a given. He talks to Thor telepathically, telling him to get back to Asgard because Hela is growing stronger because she gets her powers from Asgard. So that's kind of where everything ends at this point. So Thor, at this point now, convinces the Hulk to help him. And after a little scene with Valkyrie trying to get him to help her to get off Sakaar, Thor escapes and gets to the Quinjet that Hulk escaped in after the events of Age of Ultron. Hulk meets up with at the Quinjet as well. And we see this video message of Black Widow, and Hulk sees it, and that's what finally just turns him back into Bruce Banner. And I don't know what it was about that scene. I don't know if it was just, Hulk and Banner just kind of fighting for control. And there was something about that scene that kind of just got to me a little bit. And I liked it. I liked that scene. But so at this point now, we see Banner. We see Bruce Banner. We see Mark Ruffalo in human form, to say the least. And he freaks out. He doesn't know what's going on. He's asking Thor about if they save Sokovia, because he finds out, and we find out, that Hulk has been in control for the last 2 years. So Banner's been on the back end. And he's afraid that if he turns back to the Hulk, he's not going to come back as Bruce Banner. He's not going to be Bruce Banner ever again. He's just going to be the Hulk for the rest of his life. And this is after, Thor is trying to convince him, hey, I need you to turn back to the Hulk one more time. And Banner's not having any of it. So it's a nice back and forth between the two. They have great chemistry together. It's amazing to watch. So the two, trying to find a way out, Valkyrie and Loki have this little fight, which leads to a flashback of Valkyrie. That great scene in the trailers, of the very visual scene of Valkyrie and Hela fighting. Well, yeah, the Valkyries fighting Hela. That's a flashback that Loki gives to Valkyrie, because they're having a little fight, and they're also having a little competition for the Grand Master to see who can bring him back as Grand Champion, because that's all the Grand Master cares about. He cares about having the Hulk back. So Valkyrie, being the badass that she is of a character, the strong female character that she is, gets the upper hand, and she brings Thor and Banner back to her place with Loki chained up. And there's a nice back and forth between Banner and Valkyrie. I keep calling him Banner. Just feel weird calling him Bruce. But there's this nice little back and forth between Banner and Valkyrie, saying they think they know each other. And it plays off for the rest of the movie until Valkyrie realizes who Bruce Banner is. And they plan a rebellion because they need to get off-world, and the only way they can do that is to cause enough ruckus that they can get to this massive portal that they end up calling the Devil's Anus, which is it's very, yes, that's the kind of that is what it was called. So anyway, they cause this rebellion, and Valkyrie goes to get the captured fighters, the gladiator fighters, to break out, including Korg. And they start chaos around Sakaar, and they escape. And Thor and Loki, before they escape, Thor and Loki have this little great moment where it looks like Loki is finally changing. He's trying. You can see Thor saying these things, and Loki is having an effect. He's not playing it off. He's actually wondering if Thor really feels this way. But of course, Loki being Loki, he tries to backstab Thor, and Thor, being smarter at this point, he outplays Loki, and he kind of just leaves him there, and Thor and Valkyrie and Hulk all leave. And when they arrive on Asgard, this is the point in the movie where everything mayhem breaks loose. Thor fights Hela at the palace, telling him that Odin wasn't who he always thought he was, and Thor, at this point, it doesn't look like he really cares, and they just fight. And one of the surprising things in the movie, and I'm very surprised that they have kept this a secret, Thor loses an eye. He loses an eye like Odin, so he has this one eye throughout the rest of the movie. Meanwhile, Heimdall is leading the Asgardians out of Asgard on the Bifrost, but they get cut off, and he fights them off before it looks like he's about to die. And then Loki, all of a sudden, with the rest of the gladiators from Sakaar, come out and try to get the people on the ship that they stole from the Grand Master to get off Asgard. So Valkyrie, at this point, Valkyrie is also on a ship, and Bruce Banner is flying it, and they see the dog Finnar ready to attack a bunch of people, and Valkyrie's shooting at it, and she says this dog won't die, and Banner very reluctantly he finally decides to turn back into the Hulk. Of course, not without some comedy involved, but he turns back into the Hulk, and Hulk and the dog, kind of go off and have their own little fight. Meanwhile, Thor has another vision. He's seeing all of this go down with Hela at the palace, and this is the point where in the trailer, Hela says, you can't stop me. I'm not a queen. I'm the goddess of death. What are you the god of again? And at this point, again, Thor has, one eye. He's been cut up a little bit at this point, and he has the vision of Odin again. And him and Odin have this one last scene. And it's a very touching scene. It's this very last scene, where Thor's saying, he's doubting himself, saying, I can't beat her. None of us can. And Odin says, you're stronger than you think. And, Thor says, I don't have the hammer anymore. And Odin has this, it's a very comedic line, but it's actually a very telling line. He tells him, you're not the god of hammers, you're the god of thunder. And at this point, Thor wakes up again from his vision, and he does his best Shazam impression. And he doesn't say Shazam, but he does his best, he just calls this big bolt of lightning that blasts him and Hela off, and Thor flies to the Bifrost. And he has that scene from the trailer where, with the electricity running through him, of course, just with one eye, which was very impressive that they kept that a secret for the most part. And he basically goes God mode on Hela's soldiers with Immigrant Song playing again in that scene, and that is actually probably the best use of that song. It's not just thrown in for like whatever reason. It actually makes it fits. It doesn't make sense. It fits to the scene that's going on. So at this point, Scourge sees this, and he's basically like, nope, I'm done with this. I'm not dying here. I'm getting out of here. And he sneaks into the ship. And at this point, I forgot to mention Scourge. He has a little scene with Hela around the middle of the movie, where Hela basically asks him, why are you here? What's your ambition in life? What is your purpose? And Scourge pretty much just says, he wants to be acknowledged. He wants to be recognized. He wants to have his moment. And Scourge at this point, Thor doesn't remember Scourge. At the beginning of the movie where Thor and Scourge meet, Thor doesn't remember who he is, and Scourge is like, hey, I fought with you, on this battle. And Thor's like, oh, right, yeah. And so, Scourge has this kind of little redemption story it's not really fully fleshed out, but he has this moment where he sees, that the ship the ship with all the people on is starting to get invaded, and he has this, and this is at the point where Hela makes a comeback, and she starts just beating the crap out of Thor and Loki and Valkyrie, and Scourge has this moment where he's like, well, this is my moment, and he starts just killing all these of Hela's soldiers, and he jumps down, and it was a noble effort, but he gets killed rather easily by Hela, and Scourge dies in the movie, which I was kind of disappointed, because I kind of wanted to see a little bit more of him. But as soon as I saw that scene, I was like, yeah, he's not gonna make it. So anyway, everyone's getting killed off, everyone's getting beaten up, and Thor, realizing that there was no way they were going to stop Hela at any point, he has this crazy plan to let Ragnarok happen. So he tells Loki to go put Sator's head on the internal flame. And this is mentioned by Sator at the beginning of the movie, where he says, once my crown is put onto the eternal flame, there's been nothing that will stop me, and Ragnarok will be complete. Ragnarok will happen. Asgard will fall. And a little bit of, so that's all the way at the beginning of the movie, and then Thor mentions it again, and he kind of pretty much mentions the only one that can stop Hela is Sator. Or Sator, however you want to. I forgot how he pronounces it, and I forget how it's supposed to be pronounced, but let's just say Sator. So they're crazy enough to the writers and Taika Waititi, I should say, and Marvel. They're crazy enough. They're like, you know what? Screw it. The movie is called Thor Ragnarok, and guess what? We're gonna give the people Ragnarok. So they put the head on the flame. Thor, Hulk, Valkyrie, Loki, they all get on the ship. They all leave at a safe distance. Sator, bursts out of the palace, and Hela comes back and sees Sator, and she starts just throwing all these knives at him, having no effect, and Sator basically kills her and completes Ragnarok. Asgard is destroyed. Ragnarok happened. Asgard is gone. And I was kind of surprised that they went that far. I mean, it's called Thor Ragnarok, and I was a little surprised, but it actually happened. No, there's no more Asgard in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But according to Odin, and according to Thor, and according to Heimdall, Asgard isn't a place; it's the people. And Thor says, as long as there's people involved, Asgard will live on. So they get away, and everything's all good and clear. Thor and Loki have another moment. It looks like Loki may have a bit of, not necessarily a big change of heart, but at least enough to warrant him to be around, and Thor no longer have to worry too much about him, about betraying him and all this other stuff. They have a moment, and Loki, that's the king, and that's what happens, and Thor essentially becomes the king of Asgard. They give him this little mini throne on this ship, and that's the credits. And that is Thor Ragnarok, ladies and gentlemen. But of course, being a Marvel movie, there are post-credit scenes. The first post-credit scene is Thor and Loki discussing whether they should go back to Earth. But because before the credits roll, Thor says, Earth it is. So they're heading to Earth. However, this post-credit scene has both them discussing whether it's a good idea, especially if it's a good idea for Loki to go back to Earth. Obviously, Loki trying to rule planet Earth is probably a very sour note. However, before they can actually fully discuss it, there is a big ship that comes into frame and just hovers over the ship that everyone's on. And that's it. It cuts to black. So we don't know who the ship belongs to. The ship kind of looks a little bit like the ship that from Guardians of the Galaxy. It looks like the ship that Ronan and Nebula were on. So maybe it belongs to Thanos. Maybe it belongs to his Black Order, which is his elite group of assassins. We don't know, because that's just it just cuts. We don't know where it is. The second one is a more comedic one, which is the Grand Master either coming out of hiding or crashing somewhere, but he's in the trash field where Thor ends up for the first time, and Grandmaster congratulates them on a good rebellion and gives himself credit, because without him there would be no one to rebel against. So he calls it a tie, which is a very funny way to end the post-credit scene. So that's Thor. That is Thor Ragnarok. So my cons for the movie, they're very small. They're very, very small things. Again, the Odin reveal, the lie that I guess was been living, could have had a little extra punch for me personally, because again, it's just kind of just said. The Scourge, the character Scourge, played by Carl Urban. I wish they probably would have had him in another movie, because I think his death in the movie would have had at least an extra layer to it, because he's introduced in the first movie and he dies in this one. And he kind of just, I mean, it probably would have been a better death if he had been introduced in maybe the Thor the Dark World. But, I don't know, I just kind of, his character wasn't fully fleshed out, put it that way. The Warriors 3, they came back just to get killed off. That's it. That is the only purpose in the movie. Zachary Levi. They probably killed Zachary. I mean, they're probably going to kill Zachary Levi anyway because he has to go do Shazam now. But they kill the Warriors 3 off, which is okay. Well, not okay. It's kind of a shame, but But again, Sif's still alive somewhere in the realms. And Hela dies. My only thing with Hela dying is the con I have with that is because I would have loved to see her character be around more. Her character is so formidable, and I think her teaming up with Thanos could have been a really good combo and a really good villain combo. Having her around, like, I'm not saying not necessarily killing her off or putting her in a prison, because there's no way they can leave her in any sort of prison, but having her around probably could have been really cool. And we don't know, maybe she's still alive. We don't know. Maybe. I doubt it, but it would have been cool to see her be around a little bit longer. But that's just me, probably. As for the pros, the cast is great. All of them, all of them are great. Again, I mentioned the character flipping of the characters, like Hulk being a little bit more of a jokester, and Thor, being a little bit more loose, being more intentionally funny instead of accidentally funny. Jeff Goldblum as the Grand Master, I just assume they probably just put him in clothing. It's like, go ahead, dude, just do your thing. Just go ahead and do your thing. We'll record. We'll tell you when to stop. Yeah. Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie is great. She's a badass character, and I can't wait to see. She has to be in other films. She has to be. But she was great. She's a great addition to the cast and to the world. Hulk is awesome. They've been saying that Thor Ragnarok starts a 3 movie arc for the character, so I'm very interested in seeing what that arc is. And it's just really great to see the Hulk being able to talk a little bit more now too. And Hela, Cate Blanchett, she's awesome as a character. She really just chews up the scenery. She hams it up a little bit. You can tell she was having a hell of a lot of fun. Everyone in this movie was having a hell of a lot of fun. But it looks like she was having probably the most fun. The comedy is fantastic. The comedy is awesome. This movie is essentially a comedy. It's a superhero movie that just happens to be a comedy. It's all it is, because the comedy is fantastic. It's spot on. It's not forced or anything like that. It's perfect. And finally, my last pro is the production design and the cinematography. There are a lot of shots in this movie that are just fantastic and beautiful to look at. That scene with the Valkyrie coming in, attacking Hela. There's a scene where Hulk, the Hulk where he's it's in the trailer where he's jumping at Sator, to hit him. That's an awesome shot. Another awesome shot is when Thor is going to the Bifrost after he gets his Raiden powers, essentially, and he's going to the bridge, and there's this awesome shot where he's just jumping on the bridge, and you just see the Hela's army coming at him. It's a great shot. It really, there's a lot of frame worthy and just pause worthy moments to look at everything. It's just the production design and the cinematography is just phenomenal in this movie. So as you can probably tell, I really love this movie. I was in between. I was wobbling between a 4.5 or just a full-on 5 out of 5 for the movie, and I realized I had a ton of fun watching this. I never was bored. I never was wishing the movie would end. I just had, all the gripes that I have with the movie are very minor gripes, but they're not enough to be like, this movie's not good. I really love this movie. Screw it. I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5. You can make the argument that yes, it is a 4.5 out of 5 movie, but I had a lot of fun with this movie. The soundtrack is amazing in this too. Kind of just like that, just 80s kind of riffs and beat to a lot of the score. It's just great. It's awesome. 5 out of 5 for me, to be honest with you. I'm not gonna lie. It's a 5 out of 5 movie. For me. So that is my review for Thor Ragnarok. Thank you so much for sticking around and listening. I was gonna put this as his own little mini thing, but again, I'm going out of town, and I don't know if I won't have my laptop, so I will not be able to upload anything after that. So thank you so much for listening to the Thor Ragnarok review. Let me know what you thought of it. What was your rating? What was your favorite part? And yeah, so thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast overall. Thank you so much for listening to the Thor Ragnarok review, and I will see you guys next week.